Okay, good morning, Year 11. Welcome to episode 2 of Mr. MALTBY's home learning series. Just going to do a bit of housekeeping to start off with, and getting more of you to communicate on Teams, which is really, really good. Please keep that up. Please keep submitting, just evidence of that work that you've completed, so I can keep track of that. Just going to go through the work that's been set on Monday, and then obviously we're publishing this this support video, which is task 3 for you to do. So. First of all was to review the work. I set on Teams and on Go for Schools as an extended knowledge recall quiz of the nervous system. So if you can complete that, and I'll publish the answers on Friday for you to self-mark, which will be good. New topic, we're going to look at hormonal control specifically, looking at the endocrine system and specifically looking at how we control our blood glucose levels. You would have by now made some notes from 160 to 165, which is on Go for Schools, and drawn some diagrams as well as answered some of the summary questions if you wanted to. Please make sure you've completed task 1 and task 2 before going any further with this video, and this video will support the work that you've done in task 1 and task 2. Okay, so we're now going to move on to the part of the task 3 today, which is looking at the video, and that's going to be released today. After the video, then you can complete the Seneca task, which is kind of a review task, bringing things together, and then you've got some supplementary learning to have a look at, as well as the YouTube video link there as well. Okay, so straight into the PowerPoint then. We're going to be looking specifically at the endocrine system. You would have made some notes on this, and we've got a few extra kind of tasks to do today to kind of bring this all together. So we need to be able to describe the endocrine system, define the term hormone, label some diagrams, explain the key function of some important glands, including the pituitary gland, which is known as the master gland, and compare the actions of the nervous system and endocrine systems. That's part of the first half of this PowerPoint. So we're going to start off by making some introductory notes. You just need to have the title, the human endocrine system, and we're going to go through these notes just to make them into your exercise book. So the endocrine system is the collection of glands that produce hormones that regulate things such as metabolism, which we would have done before, which metabolism is the sum of all the reactions in your cells, growth and development, tissue function and reproduction. So there are just some examples. The endocrine system is made up of several glands, for example the pituitary gland and the adrenal gland. And we know that, for example, and we'll come back to this example as we go through this PowerPoint, the adrenal glands sit above your kidneys, okay, and they produce obviously adrenaline. Adrenaline then gets secreted by these glands into the bloodstream, and that adrenaline will travel around in the blood and then diffuse into out of the bloodstream into the heart to have its effect, okay, to increase heart rate, and can also increase breathing rate in the fight or flight response. So that's a really good example we're going to return to as we go through. Hormones and glands then. You need to know what a hormone is. Hormones are chemical messengers, okay, secreted by glands, and they travel in the blood. They travel in the blood to have their effect on target organs, but they travel in the bloodstream. And I guess this is one key difference between the nervous system and the endocrine system. The nervous system obviously transmits electrical signals, releasing neurotransmitters across synapses, which can be really, really, really fast. And we looked at those kind of reflex actions. Whereas hormones, they are secreted by glands and they travel around in the bloodstream, which takes a bit more time. And we'll come to a little comparison we're going to do at the end of this. So different hormones affect different target organs. Okay, we're going to make these. Please make these notes into your book. The bloodstream transports hormones from the glands to the target organs where they have their effect. And we've given that example already. The adrenal glands secreting adrenaline to increase heart rate for the fight or flight response. There is a TED talk here if you'd like to have a look at that. It's an optional video for you to have a look at. Really, really interesting. So you can always type that link into your browser and have a look at that. So you can pause the video at this point and have a look at that video if you'd like to. Okay, on to the kind of key part of today, which is to produce this table, which is looking at specific hormones, the target organs they have their effect on, and what that effect is. So you're going to need about probably a full page actually, so you can turn your book landscape and draw this into your books ready for the next few slides. Now, this would normally kind of be an information collection task, but obviously we can't do that today, so I'm just going to go through the slides one by one, and make sure you have this table in your book ready, and I'll go through the slides one by one, and you can collect the information that way. Okay, so pause the video at this point and draw this table into your book ready for the slides. Okay, you can obviously pause the slides at each point and jot down the appropriate information, but I'll just pick up on a couple of things as we go through. Our fight-or-flight response is really interesting. Okay, if we come up against danger, for example, let's say, for example, if you suddenly come across a bear, you're either going to fight the bear or you're going to run away. And this is a typical response involving adrenaline in the fight-or-flight response. We will look at LH and FSH in more detail when we look at the menstrual cycle. LH stands for luteinizing hormone, FSH stands for follicle stimulating hormone. Okay. Okay, so at this point, just pause the video, make sure you go back through each slide and make sure you've got that complete. And of course, we can have a discussion of these on Teams, should we want to, once we've completed the video. Okay, on to the next task. Now, we're thinking about gland position here, and where are the kind of key glands? The pituitary gland, which produces many hormones, which then can have an effect on other glands. Okay, so the pituitary gland can affect the adrenal gland, for example. And the pituitary gland produces lots of hormones and some key hormones in the menstrual cycle. So it's important to know where these glands are and what they produce. So I'd like us to draw this diagram into your books and label where these key glands are. And just add some extra notes that the pituitary gland is known as the master gland because it has an effect on other glands around the body. So pause the video at this point and just draw and label this diagram into your book. You can then use this more detailed diagram to add in some extra notes should you wish to. And this here is an optional task. Now, we've done 60-second speeches before. They can be quite interesting, and actually the reason why we do them is because if you can talk really confidently about something, you can also write confidently about something. So if you want to do this as an optional task where you practice a 60-second speech on what we've done so far, then you can do that with your parents or your dog or whatever and have a go at that as an optional task. So if you'd like to do that, you can pause the video at this point and have a go at that 60-second speech as an optional task. So finally, just to kind of bring this together, I want us to consider the differences between the nervous system and the endocrine system. So you might want to pause the video at this point and just have a think. What are some of the key differences? I'd like you to then go on to Google or go on to the internet and do some bit of research. What are the key differences? Okay. One key difference, which we can all write down, is that kind of the timing of things. So the nervous system is incredibly fast. That's why we have the nervous system controlling our reflex actions, using electrical impulses, neurotransmitters, incredibly fast. Whereas hormones and the endocrine system acts much slower, comparatively speaking, because the hormones have to be secreted by glands, they have to travel in the bloodstream to the target organ to then have an effect, and that can take much more time, relatively speaking. So that could be one key difference. Pause the video at this point and see if you can come up with 2 or 3 more. Okay, so the key kind of learning outcomes for the human endocrine system is to describe the endocrine system and define some hormone, label a diagram of the organs in the endocrine system, explain why the pituitary gland is often called the master gland, and compare the actions of the nervous system and the endocrine system. At this point, you might want to pause the video, double check your notes, and go back over any of the key areas in the video. Okay, now we can have another title now. We're going to look at one key factor that is controlled in our body. And remember, this is tying in with homeostasis, the maintenance of a constant internal environment. One thing we need to keep constant, or try to keep relatively constant as best we can, is our blood sugar levels. Okay, and we're going to look at how we do that in our body by the control of two hormones. So here we're going to have a subheading, control of blood glucose, as an example of the fact that we try to control in our body. We need to be able to describe how blood glucose concentration is monitored, describe how glycogen is a store of carbohydrate, glycogen is a store of glucose, and explain how insulin and glucagon, the two key hormones, how they work together to control blood glucose levels in this negative feedback loop. So just to start off with, let's have a think about blood glucose levels. And you've got a graph here. Over time, you can see blood glucose going up and down over time during the day. Why does your blood glucose level go up and down during the day? Pause the video, have a think. Why do you think there are three peaks here? Okay, so clearly this is showing our blood glucose levels going up and down and peaking 3 times during the day. That is because we tend to have 3 main meals a day, and that's where our blood glucose levels will be rising significantly. And the other little peaks there might be snacks that you have throughout the day. Now, of course, we need a mechanism, we need hormones to control our blood glucose levels, which is what we're going to look at today. The two key hormones are insulin, which you've most probably heard of, and glucagon. Now, if the blood glucose levels concentration is too high, as in there's too much glucose in your bloodstream, insulin is then produced, which reduces your blood glucose levels. We'll look at the mechanism of that in a minute. If blood glucose concentration is too low, as in the glucose has gone from the bloodstream, then the pancreas produces the hormone glucagon, and you start to break down the glycogen stores back into glucose to increase your blood sugar levels. So just have these initial notes written down in your book under the title Controlling Blood Glucose Levels. A good way to remember the difference of the reaction between the two is that when there's too much glucose in the blood, insulin is produced. When the glucose has gone from the blood, glucagon is produced to control the levels. That's a good little way to try and remember the difference between the two different hormones. We're going to look at the mechanism in more detail now. Okay, so I'd like you to take, we haven't got a worksheet for this, so I'd like you to take about half page to draw this into your book and have this kind of homeostasis midline here of 90 milligrams of glucose per 100 ml of blood as your kind of ideal level of glucose. Now, I want you to draw this into your book, and you can add in any further annotations that I'm talking over if you wish. So, ideally, we kind of have this relatively constant level of 90 milligrams of glucose per 100 ml of blood. And if you have a meal, then your blood glucose levels will rise after having a meal. As a result, then, your pancreas will detect that rise in the blood sugar levels and release insulin because there is too much glucose in the blood. As a result, that hormone insulin will travel in the bloodstream, and the liver will respond to that insulin hormone by taking in the glucose and storing it as glycogen. Body cells, such as muscle cells, will also do the same. They will store the glucose as glycogen as well. That will then bring your glucose levels back down to a normal level. Now, if over a period of the day, it's several hours or even longer where you haven't had a meal, then your blood glucose levels may drop, and they go below that level. As a result, then your pancreas will detect that low level in the bloodstream. It will release glucagon because the glucose has gone from the bloodstream, and as a result, the liver will break down the glycogen stores back into glucose, and the glucose will diffuse back into your bloodstream to take your glucose levels back to its normal level. And this is this kind of negative feedback loop, which we'll come on to later for the high tier stuff. So pause the video at this point. You might want to go back over those elaborations and add in further detail to your diagram where needed. So diabetes then. Diabetes is a disease where the sufferer either does not produce or does not respond to insulin. This means that they cannot regulate their blood glucose levels. And we might know somebody that suffers with diabetes. We may have diabetes ourselves. It's fairly there are two types of diabetes. Okay, type 1 diabetes is disorder in which the pancreas doesn't produce enough insulin. Okay, often that's early onset. Often you're kind of born with that. Type 2 diabetes is often through really sustained poor diet, and is also known as kind of late onset. It's a disorder in which the body's cells no longer respond to the insulin that is produced by the pancreas. Okay, which is often associated with a prolonged poor diet and overexposure to glucose. So you would have made some notes on this from the textbook, but these are kind of summary notes to bring this together. The next task then, if you haven't done this already, in the textbook work, was to kind of look at the treatments for type 1 and type 2 diabetes. So at this point, you might want to pause the video and just double check you've got your notes there on treatments. We'll have this as an optional task. So again, looking at how blood glucose levels change over time, okay, in line with our meal times. And if you want to have this as an optional task, to describe the shape of the graph and explain the inclines and the declines are slow for the diabetic line. Why do we think that is? Okay, now the last thing we're going to do, and this will be, this question's already been uploaded to Go for Schools, is to have a go at the 6-mark question. You can have a read of this guidance. We've got the learning outcomes there to finish as well. And the 6-mark question is bringing together this idea of the action of insulin and glucagon to control our blood glucose levels. So that 6-mark question has been put on Go for Schools and as an assignment. I'd like you to complete it digitally. Here it is. I'd like you to complete that digitally, which I've sent to you, and then submit it via Teams assignments. Okay, so will help me determine who's done the work and who hasn't. And if you've got any questions about this, or if you've got any queries about the lesson so far, then please just go to Teams, ask me a question, no problem at all. Okay, so there we go. I hope that's been useful. Please go to Teams, ask questions. Make sure you contact me via Teams and submit that 6-mark question by next Monday. Obviously, you've got a couple more tasks to do, but don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe.